everybody. Hello to all my partners in crime. So great to have you with me again today. Now, today's case, I want to get straight into this because this is the Soham Murders. A lot of people have asked this case, and it is a really interesting case. It's a terrible, sad case, but it's very, very interesting. Now, this was the 4th of August in 2002, and it was a UK case again. It's from Cambridgeshire, and it's called the Soham Murders because Soham is a small village within Cambridgeshire area, and Wells and Chapman, that's where they lived, and that's also where the murders were committed of these two 10-year-old girls. So we're looking at this case, I suppose, and this case is one that really, I think, shocked Britain to its core. Really, everyone in it, I think, even around the world, people were shocked by this murder. So anyway, let's get on. So around about 11:45 on Sunday the 4th of August 2002, Jessica Chapman wanted to go round to Wells' house. Now, Jessica only lived, I think she lived in Brook Street. It wasn't very far at all, just around the corner from Wells' house, and she lived in the nearby, it's called Red House Gardens. So it was a short little distance. These girls were both 10. Now, Jessica hadn't seen Holly, but because she had been on holiday, she'd been in Mallorca in Spain for a holiday, and she had brought Holly back a lovely little necklace with the initial H on it for her, and she was so excited to give this necklace to Holly, something that she had brought her back from Spain, you know, because they were such good friends. So off she went. So about 11:45 time, she's left her home. She's gone to Holly's for a barbecue that was being put on by Holly's parents, and they just had a great day. And they was heard singing upstairs and playing around, and having a great time because they were great friends. Now, also present at this time was another young girl, and her name was Natalie Pryor. And they played computer games. They was just singing along in the bedrooms. You could hear the laughter coming out of these kids' rooms. And they were up there for about an hour and a half, but then the little friend, Natalie, had to go home. So it just left then Holly and Jessica, and they were still playing around, and they'd had a bit of a barbecue and done everything else. By 3:15, both girls had changed. So they changed into these distinctive replicas of Manchester United football team. The football shirts, they're red and with the numbers on, because they loved them. They absolutely loved Manchester United football club. They just loved it. And I think one of them was the top of Holly's brother. So Jessica put that one on. So they both looked the same. You had one sort of young girl, this 10-year-old girl, Holly, with this blonde hair, and then you had Jessica, and she had like nice soft brown hair, and they were just happy, lovely kids. And of course, Jessica was tanned anyway because she'd just come back from Mallorca. So they just got into these red shirts and they started playing around. But about 5:04, they had this photograph taken. They'd had, the two friends and the family had taken photos of the children as they ate dinner, and just as they stood up, and you can see the photo of them, and that was the last photo of them taken while they were alive, and that was at 5:04 p.m. on Sunday the 4th, 2002. 5:04, and they know it's 5:04 because, of course, the pictures, the camera timed and dated it. So these girls didn't have very long to live at all. So we know at 5 minutes or 4 minutes past 5 on that day, they had all their photos taken with everybody else in this barbecue, with people around, and everyone was chatting and having photographs, and it's great photographs and a great day they was having. And then they went up to Holly's bedroom and continued to play. And that they went up there about 10 past 6, That's the last time that someone saw them going upstairs and they could hear them upstairs. It was about 6:10 in the evening. And then around about approximately 6:15, for some reason, and no one really knows why, the girls left the residence. They left the house. They left Holly's house. They didn't inform anyone in the house. They didn't inform any guests. They probably thought their mum was busy and stuff and were just going to pop down the shop, whatever they thought they was going to do. But they was going to the local sports centre. They think that's what they was going for. So they had some change and they wanted to go to the vending machine that was there. And so that was at 6:15 p.m. on Sunday the 4th, 2002. That's when they left the home, 6:15. So while they were returning to Holly's house at this Red House Gardens, Wells and Chapman walked past this college close home, and this was the home of Ian Huntley, and he was the senior caretaker of the local secondary school there. Huntley, we don't know how or what happened really, because he's never really said, has he? But Huntley really eventually lured these children, these girls, into this house, stating that Maxine, his girlfriend, Maxine Carr, the girl's teaching assistant at this St Andrew's primary school, was also present in the house. This is what he's saying, because we don't actually know. This is Ian Huntley telling you this. I wouldn't believe a word that Ian Huntley says, but this is what he says happened and how he got these girls into this house, by saying that their teacher or their teaching assistant was in the house. But Carr actually wasn't. She wasn't there. Maxine Carr wasn't there. I think she was in Grimsby in Lincolnshire on that date, and she was visiting her mother there. So for some reason, we don't know how he got them in the home, but they went in. So as I say, no one knows. Huntley could come up with many different versions, but his thing was, he was washing his dog outside and he saw two girls passing by, and he says that one of the girls, and this was at 6:30 p.m, don't forget they hadn't left their house until 6:15 p.m, so we're talking about 15 minutes now, that he has seen them, and he says that one of them, I think it was Jessica, had a nosebleed, and he had also told them that the girls, Maxine Carr was in the house, and the girls, thought, I suppose it was okay to go in. He was the caretaker of the school. They knew him. They knew his girlfriend, or so they thought. So as I've said, they've now gone into this home. We can only imagine what's gone on in that home. We don't know, because this man's not going to say anything ever about what went on in the home. As we go through this case, you will see with Ian Huntley that he is a sexual predator. He's well known for it. There's been many issues leading up to this case, and I think as we go through you'll see certain things about this case of what we would probably assume happened to these girls. Little Jessica's phone, this 10-year-old girl who had last been seen really going to the room at 6:10. They know she left the house by 6:15. It is now 6:46 p.m. and Jessica Chapman's phone was turned off. So he says he saw them at 6:30 when he was washing his dog, cleaning the dog outside, and he tells you, and you'll see it, I'll put the clip on, and you'll see him explaining in quite some detail about how he was washing the dog, and the dog done this and this, very precise in what he did. Too precise really, but have a look at the clip and see. So after that then, we know at 8 o'clock, by 8 p.m, Nicola Wells entered her daughter's bedroom expecting these kids to be there, to tell her the truth, because no one had heard them go out. They probably just thought they was popping down to the sports hall to get a can of drink or something out the machine, or sweets out the machine, and these girls never made it home. So it's now 8 o'clock, the mother's walked in the bedroom, they are not there. Holly or Jessica are nowhere to be seen. This woman knew something was wrong. She really did. She knew something was wrong. Because the girls would not have done that. Holly would not have done that. She may have popped out because there was a lot of people in the house, and they were in and out, and she probably thought, I'm just going to pop, it's only down the road, we're just going to pop down the road. She's with a friend, isn't she? She's with her best friend. They're both 10-year-old, they're pottering along the streets. Who would think that they would never come back? So she knew something. At 8 o'clock at night, none of these girls could be found. They've looked the streets, they've looked everywhere, and of course they've then rung, all the other families and anybody that could have seen these girls. Now everyone's looking for these girls, and there's not a single sign of them. And I think Sharon Chapman was devastated. Again, she knew as well, and she continued to look. And I think it was about 9:55 p.m. that they rang the police, because you're talking about a small village type thing in Soham. Everybody knows each other. There isn't many places they could have gone there, and I don't think anyone expected this. I really don't. I think this is what was such a shock about it. I think the girls probably thought they'd wandered off, or they was either at one house or another friend's house. But once all they'd been checked, once everywhere had been checked, and they couldn't find these girls, then it was really, really worrying. And I think the police knew that from the first phone call, actually, at 9:55 p.m. on the 4th. They knew that this was not going to end well. Listen, the police put 400 officers onto this. 400 officers were assigned to this case. It was one of the biggest searches, I think, ever, really. Because they just needed to find them. They done house to house, as they normally would, and I think they done the whole place and the surrounding villages. They searched, and I think there's a lot of waterways and stuff in Cambridge as well, so they searched all that. They searched everywhere they could possibly think of searching. Now, there's a United States Air Force base there, and the personnel's there, at this nearby airbase, really, they even assisted, everybody assisted here with this search for these children. So I've said, haven't I, about the photograph that was taken of these two young girls within 2 hours of them going missing. That was their last photo ever taken of them girls when they were alive. And it's terrible, really, but that was the photograph that was being circulated because it was the most up-to-date photo that the families had of their children. Plus they were wearing the shirts, the Manchester United shirts, these bright red shirts. It was so, distinguishable. You could have seen these kids walking down the street. You would have known it was them. So that photo is what was used, and it was used countrywide, I think even worldwide in the end, in search for these children. So you've had all this, you've had everyone searching, all the press out there, and the press were really good in this, without a doubt. Without the press, really, this may have took longer than it would have. So they've done an absolutely fantastic job in this. I think everyone that worked on this case did a fantastic job, really. They were on it from day one. But you see, and you had, I think what made them so concerned about Holly and Jessica is because these children were well known not to talk to strangers. They knew it. That they'd had classes in their school. Their school was well warned. These kids were together. It wasn't like one was taken and one wasn't. These kids were together. So really they knew by the attitude of these kids, of how sort of experienced they was in this, don't talk to strangers, don't get in someone's car, they knew, they understood them dangers. So then it had to be someone they knew. because the police really believe that the parents and the teachers have said these children would not get in someone's car. They wouldn't go off with a stranger for any reason. And really they didn't, did they? But listen, the police still have to do their job. They have to question every sex offender in that area, or in a radius, really. And there are many, many of them on that list, and many of them probably not on that list. I think there was about over 260 registered sex offenders across the UK, including 15 high-risk paedophiles that were also questioned throughout, and really they were all eliminated from the inquiry. One, they wasn't in the area and stuff, but you know, there's a lot of people to have to question before you get to the point where, you know, because it has to be done, you can assume these kids know everything about, you know, safety and stuff. But you know, if a man's going to pick you up and take you, they're going to pick you up and take you. And who said it was one? It could have been 2 or 3 men. So the police had to do this, and it's a very worrying time for the parents of any missing child. You know, it must be awful, and it must be awful to learn that they are having now to question these sort of people under this disappearance. But we know, don't we, really, when these kids have been going long for so long, and there's 2 of them, they're 10-year-old, you know, it must have been absolutely terrible for these poor families, really. So as in everything from 2000 onwards, or 2002, 2005, CCTV was really coming into play in the UK. I mean, it's everywhere now. But in 2002, Soham did have some CCTV footage, which was amazing, really. It was really, really good, and it was actually really helpful because it showed the girls, it's their last footage of the girls before they disappeared, and that was also released to the public. This footage was of the children arriving at the local sports hall where they said they was going to go, this little sports centre, to go to the little machine and get the drink or sweets out of it, and that was at 6:28 p.m. So we knew, you know, they knew that these girls were alive at 6:28 p.m. and it's really sad, really, because he only lives 2 minutes from there. There was thousands and thousands, I think over 2,000 phone calls in relation to this. You know, people trying to help, people think they may have seen something, people just tried to help. But of course there was nothing really. That was it. That CCTV footage, that was it really of them girls. I think on the 7th of August they had a candlelight vigil just to also keep, you know, things going and hopefully jog someone's memory. They had 2 girls that were dressed up as Holly and Jessica, and they done a reconstruction of where they went and what they would have looked like on the day. So they've tried everything. They've tried everything. And then you have this Kevin Huntley, you see, and Maxine Carr. And I've already told you and showed you the interview with him. But now you have to look at the interview of her to see just how bad these people are. She's just terrible. These people are looking for their child. You've got the whole country up in arms, really, you know, heartbroken, I think. You've got searchers, public searching, everyone doing something, and you've got here Kevin Huntley knowing what he'd done to these children, and really you had Maxine Carr, and I'm going to say it because it's going to come out later on this video, knowing what he did to them children.
Nobody believes that they would ever run away. They was very close to all their family.
Just as Huntley was arousing suspicion by giving interviews, so was his girlfriend.
This is something I'll probably keep for the rest of my life, I think. It's what Holly gave me on the last day of term. She gave me this with a poem on the inside, saying to a special teaching assistant, really, and we'll miss her a lot and we'll see her in the future. And that's the kind of girl she was. She was just lovely, really lovely.
That's the sort of girl she was. Both my producers said that was odd, wasn't it? She seemed to be speaking in the past tense. She was saying was, like the girls weren't around anymore.
And that's the kind of girl she was.
So there was a little bit of a scare, I think, for the parents, and that was, I think, on the 13th of August 2002. A jogger had seen a mound of dirt, and that was close to just outside Newmarket. And of course, you're looking for bodies, aren't you? You're looking for either missing children, or you're looking for bodies. So of course the police had to go, and they was digging up, and it ended up being a badger set. And so again, the families had nothing. They still couldn't find these children. They still didn't know what happened to these children. They'd gone through all this, thinking these bodies were buried there, and you can imagine the build-up that in themselves, that they would have to have come to terms with that, to find out there was nothing really there. It's a badger set. And then the pain and the anguish to these parents then continue on. Then you have Ian Huntley, you see. He's there and he's searching. He's got the stickers up in the window. He's doing press interviews. He's talking to the press. He's talking to anyone really that would listen. He's going in to the local church and helping arrange with the search. You see, because he wants to be in the know, doesn't he? He wants to know what the police know. And he was, one individual, I think, that from early on was suspicious because of his behaviour. And he claims that he had spoken with the girls, and immediately before their disappearance and he was a 28-year-old, actually, Ian Huntley at the time of these murders. And he informed, actually, I think, the investigators on the 5th of August that he had engaged in a brief conversation with both girls on his doorstep the previous afternoon. So he had said that he had spoken to these girls, and then he says, I was probably, one of the last people to see them alive. And if you really look closely on his interview stuff, and I put a little clip up here of it, you see the smirk on his face, and he has a glint, you can see it, that really thinks he's got away with it. He really does. But I think the press, because he was everywhere, this man, he wanted to know everything. I was the last one to see them live, and when you're trying to explain to someone what you've done the night before, when someone's gone missing, you don't use as much detail as he used. He used, really, the dog was dirty, the dog went for a run, then the dog came back, then the dog was this, and then the dog had to wash the dog, then they saw them, and then they went that way. It was too much. It was too memorised. It was no way was he thought, you'd think, hang on a minute, where was I, what time was it? But he knew the times, he knew everything. And they knew, because these press that do these sort of, reporters that report on crime have seen it all, and they know, really, they know when something is suspicious, and they reported him actually to the police quite quickly. But I think the police already had their suspicions, because he would go up to the police and ask them questions. Found anything yet? Found any evidence yet? Is there anything? He couldn't help himself. He was just walking around as proud as punch that he's part of this search, and yet he'd killed them. And then he says about Maxine Carr, the girls were inquiring, they wanted to know if she had got her job or not. Her job, no, she hadn't got the job, luckily, but she wouldn't have had it after that anyway. But she had, I think she was working to training to be a teaching assistant. She was also there, I think, voluntary. I'm not sure if she was paid for this job to get experience. And then there was a full-time paid position coming up in the same school that he was the janitor of, really. And no, she didn't get that job. And then he says he had to say no, she was unsuccessful. And one of the girls said, tell her we're so sorry. This is what he's saying to them. Tell them we're so sorry. Before both the children walked up College Street in the direction of the bridge leading to towards Clay Street, which is sort of up near Morley Village. I mean, it was so descriptive, this man, but he gets the bits in. Oh, they were so, tell her we're sorry, you know, that she didn't get the job. I mean, you're talking about two 10-year-old kids, really. This was all made up in this man's mind of this conversation he'd had. He probably had that conversation. That's probably how he got them into that house. Something in there was the truth, but with Ian Huntley, you just would never know what was the truth or not, really. And actually, the same with Maxine Carr. So listen, everyone was suspicious of Ian Huntley right from the beginning, but there's a difference between being suspicious and having proof of that he's done something. So I think on the 5th, after he spoke to them, stating that, you know, he was probably one of the last to see them alive, you know, is he like, I was probably one of the last to see them alive. Oh my God, this man, they searched his house, they couldn't find any evidence in the house at all. I think it was just a quick search. But then we find out that what he's done is he has washed all the sheets. He's washed everything. Even though this man never does a bit of housework in his life, she has to do it all, and Maxine Carr would have had to have done it all. When she was away, when she got back, all the sheets were washed. This is what she's saying. He'd washed all the sheets, he'd washed everything, bathroom cleaned, everything cleaned. Everything. And, you know, well, he never usually does it, but I just thought he had another woman in, because that's what he does. That's what she said. So also, because it was raining out, I mean, in England, most of the time, even in August, it rains. But he had a lot of washing out on the line, Huntley. You know, this washing he'd done, lots of it. You know, the sheets, this, that, and the other, out on the washing line, even though it had been raining for a couple of days. So they knew something was suspicious there. One, because of all this washing. Usually if it rains in England, we bring it in, chuck it in the tumble dryer. You wouldn't leave it out for days. He had left, he'd done this washing. It was raining when he would have put that washing out, because they asked him, what day, you know, when did you do? Well, I've done it, just hung it out. Why would you hang it out in the rain? Nothing what this man said added up at all. And so, as I say, we don't know what happened to these children. We really don't. But we know something happened to them in the bathroom and in the bedroom. And then in the dining room, I think when the police officers asked him, you know, what's happened in the dining room, it was so wet, and he said, oh, excuse the mess, we've had a flood. He literally flooded his house, the downstairs of his house. It was that wet with water. He said he'd had a flood. Trying to get rid, I think, of incriminating evidence. But it made him look more suspicious, really. That's really all it did, was make him look very, very suspicious. So on the 6th of August, Huntley drives from Soham to Grimsby to pick up Maxine Carr from her mother's. Because remember, she wasn't there, was she? That night, that day, she was at the mother's. So this is now the 6th of August. He goes and picks her up from there. Shortly before he got to the end of this lane, they pulled up, and it was one of Maxine Carr's mother's friends that'd seen it, and they'd opened the boot, and the two of them were talking over this car boot being open. They were looking inside and talking over it, and he looked very, very distressed, actually. Really, he was very pale, this woman says. I think her name was Marion Clift. She states he was very pale, he was shaking. They just both looked into the boot, and then Maxine Carr just stood alongside him. And when they noticed, and it looked like the woman said that she was crying or weeping, but when they noticed this woman looking, they pulled themselves together and slammed the boot, got in the car and drove off. So I think what we've got to think about, because later on in this, Maxine Carr comes into this a little bit later on, I think is at that point, I believe that he told Maxine Carr what he had done. When they stood and looked in that boot of that car, he had told her what he had done, without a doubt. This was only 2 days after the murder. Why would she be weeping looking into the car? Why would he be shaking and powering looking into a car? Into the boot of this car. I believe Maxine Carr knew then a lot more about this murder than what she ever let on, even when she went to court. And it's when the things after that have come out after court about her that makes her so much more guilty than she ever was, or ever what people actually thought she was. So out all this time, and I think it was a Sky correspondent, Jeremy Thompson, that kept interviewing lots and lots of people around that time, and he's the one actually, you've seen him in a clip, or both clips, where he was talking to Maxine Carr and also to Ian Huntley at that point. Now, Ian Huntley kept saying, oh, they're going to be found. I'm sure, it'd be a couple of weeks and they'll be coming home and stuff. The man was absolutely mad. And then you had Maxine Carr sort of saying, and you'll see her clip in a minute, about, holding the card up about what they wrote to her. But it's what she says in that interview, and that people really sparks their interest. So now we've not only got one suspect, we've now got two. Because once she continues, you had enough with him doing interviews and it was everywhere. Now she started. And I think he felt more positive about not getting caught. Because of course he had his woman backing him, didn't he? He had Maxine Carr backing him all the way. She's now doing interviews. Oh, these children, they loved me. They was upset because I was leaving. They've wrote me a beautiful card. That.
Saying to a special teaching assistant, really, and we'll miss her a lot, and we'll see her in the future. And that's the kind of girl she was. She was just lovely.
Now, the thing is with Ian Huntley, he's probably not as intelligent as he likes to think he is, because he continued to ask the police about DNA. Not go and look it up like most people would. He wanted to know, how's the investigation going? How long does DNA last? How long can it last outside? How, all these sorts of things. How's it work? You've got two young girls missing, two 10-year-old girls missing. You're the caretaker of a school. Your girlfriend was she wasn't a teacher. She was a teaching assistant in this school who knew these children really well. But all you're worried about is DNA. That was all they was worried about. How does this DNA work? How long does it last? How do you get rid of it? Things like that, really, really strange questions. And by this stage, the police just needed some form of evidence, probably the bodies, at some point, to arrest these people, because they actually knew. But I think it just took them a while to you can't just arrest someone because you suspect, because they're stupid like this, or they're asking stupid questions and acting strangely. You have to have evidence. So they were really searching now, and had been probably from about the 5th of August actually, searching for evidence with Huntley and Maxine Carr. They were the two in their mindset. You see, because Huntley, not only was he behaving like this, and he said he was the last one to see the girls alive, and then the wording that Maxine Carr used in her interviews, all this was leading up. But he had 3 scratches, you see, on his face. I think there's about 3 centimetres long, these 3 scratches across his face. And he said the dog did it. So there was a lot of stuff leading up towards Huntley, really. But then you see it all starts to come unwound, doesn't it? Because Maxine Carr lied. Ian Huntley lied about a lot of things. You remember he said they came to see Maxine Carr, to see how she got on with her job, and he said to them, Maxine Carr's inside, but she's in the bath and stuff. And as he kept them talking on, she was bathing, trying to tell the police that Maxine Carr was in that property on the 4th of August 2002. She was in the bath, and then she says she heard the children outside talking to Huntley. So they're trying now to make this alibi together, aren't they? Because they actually believe that they can get away with it, even though she had gone to visit her mother on that weekend. She wasn't there. I don't know why they didn't think the police would check them sort of things. but obviously they didn't think they would, but they did. So then you see, you have now enough now to arrest someone, don't you? When you found out that they are lying, they have no alibi. You've just admitted before you were the last person, or probably the last person, to see these children alive, but she was in the bath, wasn't she? Well, she's not in the bath anymore. Now we know she wasn't there. So why would you lie? And why would she? And that's when they were arrested. So this questioning lasted about 7 hours, this first questioning. And then each of them had to provide in writing, you see, formal statements, witness statements, didn't they? Because now the police want it in writing, because if you're going to lie, you're going to have to put it in writing. Once you put it in writing, you can't say you didn't say it. So they wanted this. And then they had to place them, you see, in a safe house, because now the word's gone out, hasn't it? The word's gone out that 2 people are being questioned in relation to the murders of 2 young girls, 2 10-year-old girls. And so, I think it was in Histon, they placed them in protective custody there in a safe house there to stop any public getting hold of them. So really, Huntley's life and her life was just about to change.